Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Saco School Board meeting for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025 at 7:01. Would like to make note that all school board members are present with the exception of School Board Warnoff and School Board Kidder, who have both been dismissed this evening. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you, everyone. Okay, that takes us to item number 3 this evening, and that is the approval of the school board meeting minutes dated for February 26, 2025. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we approve the school board meeting minutes dated February 26, 2025.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Roach. Nope. Richards? I know you. Some nights you guys sound just alike. Okay, any discussion on the minutes? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. It's 5.
The way you said it sounded like a question, like 5?
Oh. All righty, taking us to item number 4 this evening. There are no adjustments to the agenda. There are no correspondence this evening. Moving on to item 6 is public session. If there is anyone wishing to speak, please step forward, state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes to address the school board.
Hi, my name is Lisa Pettit. I live at 92 Franklin Street, Saco, and I am on the PTO for CK Burns and for Saco Middle School, and I just wanted to thank you for considering the request to change the open house dates for CK Burns and SMS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak, please step forward. Okay, not seeing anyone seeking any recognition. Moving on to item 7, that is the superintendent's report this evening, and Superintendent Ray.
All right, good evening, everybody. Several different things tonight, but first, if you guys have been watching the news and understanding that today there were several cuts to the Department of Education, federal level, I just want to kind of update people on what information we had this afternoon of the impacts and where that would be. So there are approximately 4,000 employees at the Department of Education national level, and half of those would have been cut through buyouts or layoff as of today. The Federal Student Aid Office and Office of Civil Rights were the most affected. Education Secretary McMahon stated that congressionally appropriated money, including financial aid, won't be affected because that's been authorized by Congress. However, if there's less staff, the processing times on those will probably take longer. Federal student loans and financial aid will continue as long as Congress maintains the funding levels and the programs. Special education and 504 accommodations remain legally protected, though complaint processing will probably be much slower. Commissioner McMahon has suggested possibly moving disability rights enforcement to Health and Human Services. The function of the department will be intact as it's required by law and by Congress. They're the only ones that, Congress is the only ones that can get rid of a full department. And then it said that really the biggest probably thing that will impact people the most is the staff reductions in Federal Student Aid Office, and it could create operational challenges for people who are filling out their FAFSA form or other aid programs. And so that's the update that we have on that today. To more local situations, just remind people that K and pre-K registration is out there in the public for people to sign their kiddos up for. If you haven't already, they'll be on the district website. Early registration allows us to plan. And that's the most important piece, is knowing that we can, plan for what the fall looks like. Saco Middle School received a $2,500 grant from the Dion Charitable Trust to support their music program. Funding will be used to refurbish or replace the school-owned instruments, so great job on that. Saco and Biddeford school departments are hosting an educational webinar for parents, caregivers, educators, anyone who works with children, titled Parenting in the Brain, on Tuesday, March 25th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. You can sign up to a link on our website. Let's see. We have our SMS Bobcat players in Beetlejuice Jr., which will perform on Friday, April 11th at 7 p.m., Saturday the 12th at 2 p.m. in the Thornton Academy Garland Auditorium. And then on another piece of news, we had a kind of a national organization around climate reach out to me. And if you remember from the the presentation on the new school building, there's this $1 million tax credit for us going with geothermal. The company has asked Kevin and I to fly to Washington to meet with legislators to lobby to keep that tax credit, because it's very important for us, not only from a educational standpoint in our facilities or future municipal facilities, but also for the local workforce and what that means in that. And so we're going to have an opportunity to go down later this month and work with our state legislative leaders on that piece. So that will be exciting for us, because we need to keep that intact and do some of those pieces so we qualify for that money coming back to us. The other piece on the building project, I would say that, let's knock on wood, because certainly the economy seems to have ups and downs every day, but another school department in the area that's about 6 months ahead of us went out to bid, and that number was $5 million less than what they had estimated. So that could be very good news for us.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments for the superintendent? Okay, moving on to item 8, that is the chair's report. School board member Chair Preble.
Hi. I don't have anything to report this evening, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 9, there are no staff reports this evening. Item 10 is the board subcommittee minutes. Memos in your packet, and item A is the Policy and Personnel Committee agenda. The next meeting will be 4/9 at 5:30 p.m. Item B is the Finance and Infrastructure Committee. Next meeting will be 3/26 at 4:30 p.m. And the Curriculum Committee, next meeting will be 3/24 at 4:30 p.m. There is no old business this evening. Moving on to item 12, new business. Item A is new hires. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman.
I move we approve the stipend nomination of Nick Fuller for the C.K. Burns Writing Club and issue a stipend contract for the 24-25 school year.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Preble. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. School Board Member Preble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richards.
Yes.
School Board Member Roach.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, item B is resignations. Is there a motion this evening?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman.
I move we accept the retirement of Becky Marshall, Fairfield school teacher, effective at the end of the 24-25 school year.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Richards. Any discussion or comment on this item? School Board Member Truman.
I just want to thank Becky Marshall for all the years she's spent at Fairfield. I had the pleasure of, one of my children had her, and she's a magical human being, and I'm going to be really sad that no other kids after this year will get to experience her teaching, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? And I agree with that sentiment. She worked with my mother for many, many years, knew her personally, and she is going to be greatly missed. School Board Member Johnston?
I just want to also say thank you to her and to say that I have the same sentiments as both of you have just expressed. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Preble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richards.
Yes.
School Board Member Roach.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, and is there a second motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
School Board Member Truman.
I move we accept the resignation of Sarah Hitchcock, young school teacher, effective at the end of the 24-25 school year.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Richards. Any discussion or comments on this item? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. School Board Member Preble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richards.
Yes.
School Board Member Roach.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, that now takes us to item C, and that is a building update.
Okay, very quick update on the building project. First, all of our documents have been submitted to the state. All of our as-built, it was like what, Meg, like 350-page plus worth of plans. So those are in review at the state level. And then the other big news is if you've had an opportunity to drive by the lot, or you actually can walk out there, the trees have been cleared. There's still a lot of lumber on the ground and over the next couple of weeks, but we got to go out, Meg and I got to go out with the city the other day. Dawn was with us, and you start to really get a feel of what it's going to look like as a school out there, and I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised about how you have that I'm in the woods feel out there, because you can see basically a couple of buildings from the site. From the road, I don't think you're going to be able to see from the main road. I don't think you'll see the school. Some of the buildings, once the trees leaf out, I don't know that you'll see it all. Certainly there will be driveways and pieces that connect, but it's pretty exciting to get out there. So anyone that wants to go, let us know. We're happy to walk with you out there.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for the superintendent? School Board Member Johnston?
Since I noticed that my microphone's still on, I guess I was, sorry. No, I think it's just very exciting, and obviously it will start to give us all an idea of what is actually to come. Easier to imagine when there's, some more progress having been made. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thank you. Is that something we could possibly get some dates together to throw out to the city council and maybe invite them on a walk? I think a lot of
Certainly.
them probably haven't been out there before, and this would be a good opportunity that maybe we can arrange. Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to item D, that is the approval of lease agreement with Toddle Inn. Superintendent Ray?
Okay, so this has been an issue that we've been working on for a long time. And probably not a recommendation that you thought would be coming your way based off historically where we've been in this situation as a community. But as we started to look forward, we had obviously two considerations to make. First and foremost, where are we going to educate our students in a quality facility? And while we know that location has been part of the issue, the facility works and is designed for our, it works for our needs, especially knowing that we are probably 3 years away from moving in to a new building. Through part of the process, Meg, Jamay, and others really tried to look at all of the spaces in the city that could be available for use. what they would do for the number of students they would hold, what it would do for our program, understanding what moving costs would be, or updating those facilities to make them code compliant. And we started to really quickly figure out that that was a very challenging situation for us to find to do the best educationally and financially. And so then we engaged Toddle in negotiations of what a possible extension would look like. And we're here tonight to present an extension of the contract, which it gives us the opportunity to, if construction is delayed, to have segments of time that we could re-up. We have been able to reduce the current price of what we're paying for what we would pay next year by $81,000. So that is a significant amount. We reduced the square footage price by $8 per square foot, or 29.7%. We've held the 3-year costs to a situation that still will be under what we're currently paying. We're currently paying $272,000. And at the end of the 3-year extension, we would be at $237,000. And while we know that there was a lot of history that leads up to this, I do want to say that we've been able to work really well with the current management situation to come to present an agreement that we hope is something that will work for the community moving forward for the next several years until we get to a place where we're moving into our new facilities. So, turn it over to the board for questions.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments for the superintendent? School Board Member Johnston.
Thank you. Mr. Superintendent, I know a lot of thought has gone into this and a lot of planning. Do you anticipate that we would need the full 3 years and then potentially sometime beyond that before we might be in the new school building? I assume that's what you do, but I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, I think the full 3 years is probably realistic, because as a community, we may be forced in a situation where, in the best of situations, we would be thinking about a mid-year move, like all timelines. I don't know that that's exactly the best thing educationally for kids or for families, because a mid-year move or an April move means you're relearning routines, all of those things, bus routes, traffic changes. Not sure that's a great idea. The other piece that, is that you have to think about is that there is so much that can happen between now and that start date. Just thinking about a current project that I'm doing in Biddeford, things were going great until a month and a half of snow and cold. And then it's just like comes to a screeching halt. So when you think about where we'll be on a project, hopefully doing a lot of work next fall, but if next winter's a very rough winter, then there's delays. Until you can really close in that building or those buildings, it makes work outside tough and very weather dependent. So yeah, I think you're gonna need those because the goal would be 27, 28 sometime is when that building is done. More hopeful that we wouldn't have to have extensions.
Thank you for that. I just was curious about and you're right, I can understand how there are definitely delays. Anything that you try to do usually takes longer than you would like or anticipate. But I just wanted to ask that question so that I had a sense of what you have, why we're talking about a 3-year extension and then potential addition to that. I guess the other thing that I would like to say is that I appreciate very much your reference to the history. all I would say, I think at this point in time, is that I probably have more history with the history than probably anybody else in this area. And I would say that I very much appreciate it if you have worked out something with that location that will be beneficial to the school department. I totally understand why the concept of moving things all around and creating new spaces that we probably won't use for very long is disruptive for one thing and also expensive for another. So given that, and I do truly believe that you and everyone else involved has really tried hard to make sure that this is beneficial for us ultimately as a school department. I would say that I won't forget the history, but I can see how we should go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? School Board Member Roach?
I'll touch on the history a little bit because I need to get on public record of my ultimate support for this, considering it was a major, major scandal back in the day. And I think some of us even on this bench as a result from what happened back then. For some who don't know, my history, not as extensive as Beth's on the school side, but had a lot of history in that industrial park. And the process that got that pre-K in the industrial park was just a disgrace. But with Jamie and her team, it's people that can make the difference there. And kudos to you guys to take a situation that started off terribly and to get it to where it is now. Costs were, of course, a huge factor, probably the biggest one. And that has been rectified. Going over the numbers with Jeremy. In terms of a pre-K in an industrial park, that is still problematic, but the schools have made it work. And in one way, I kind of like that kids can, even at a very young age, but especially their parents, can, drive by and see businesses that are actually making things. And manufacturing still remains strong here. And I encourage as many educators as possible to take field trips out to the industrial park and see businesses and see how we work together as a community. The new school, a lot of people believe that the new school is an industrial park too. It's not, but it does have the entrance to the industrial park, and I think the pre-K experience helped us, be comfortable with the spot of the new school. So with that said, yes, you can mark the date and the time. I had the countdown clock at home of when the pre-K lease was going to end. So I'll reset that clock, and guess we'll go another 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? School Board Member Truman?
I just feel like I need to also put it on the record that I did not foresee us being here at the end of this lease. As Kevin said, partially one of the biggest reasons why I'm on here to begin with, but I appreciate all the work that you did to get the cost down. I mean, it's still not the most ideal situation, but it's better than what we would have piecemealing everything like we did. I think the schools did during COVID when they tried to expand it, and they had them in the church, and they had it everywhere, and it was just kind of chaotic. So I appreciate that everything's staying as it is for now. I feel like the damage is done at this point with covenants and at this point. So thank you for doing this and making sure that we can continue this program that I particularly, my middle child had the best experience. Jamie, killing it as always. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. And that's it.
Anyone else? Okay, I'd just like to note on the School Board Member Johnston.
I just actually want to apologize to Kevin because he was involved back at that point in time. He wasn't on the school board, but he was involved. So my mistake, I misspoke there, but yes, for me, there is, a lot of, and Kevin has a great insight from a different perspective at that point in time. There was a lot that went on at that point, but I think we're all seeming to be in agreement that at this point in time, 3 years is a good plan.
I just want to correct her correction. No, Beth took the brunt, the beat down on school boards. So you have the more experience on that side. We were in the industrial park meeting with lawyers and all that stuff. So no, your experience here is it rules the roost here. So okay.
Superintendent Ray?
Just also a reminder to the school board is that you guys are just one part of the process in this. Also, this lease needs to go in front of City Council.
Which we have proposed for Monday night. It will be on our agenda for approval. I would like to add, I actually know somebody who was just hired in the Gorham School Department with their new pre-K program. And when they knew that she was from Saco, I will tell you that they were impressed. And despite our history and all of the challenges that we went through during that time, our program is leading the way. And all of the other municipalities and districts throughout the state who are just starting their programs are following our lead and looking at us as a mentor. So I would like to say kudos to this crew and the administration out there doing for the great work. Okay, moving on to,
I think we need.
oh, I'm sorry, yep, we do need a motion. Is there a motion?
I'm happy to make it.
School Board Member Truman?
I move we approve the lease agreement with Tuttle Inn for a 3-year term of June 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028.
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Any additional discussion or comments? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. And again, this will be on for council approval Monday night. Okay, now takes us to item E, and that is the Maine Paid Family Leave Act recommendation.
Okay, so earlier this year, I provided some information to you. As we know that the Maine Paid Family Medical Leave Act requires employees and employers to pay up to 0.5% to access paid family medical leave, and that law went into effect January 1st, so currently our employees and the employer are paying those in some situations based off where you were on a collective bargaining agreement. In our budget for this year, we have budgeted the 0.5%, knowing that those things will come forward and that we would be paying that tax. One of the opportunities that you have is to not enroll in the state program and go with a private provider. And we have our own tax identification number here on the school department side. So as in some municipalities where you share the same tax ID number, the city and the school would have to do the same thing. I've been working with Paquin and Carroll getting quotes on this, and there's a significant financial savings to districts and to employees by going with private insurance. First, number one, any of the employees that are currently paying the 0.5% and the district's paying the 0.5%, if approved by the school committee, on April 1, we could stop paying that 0.5%. And that would go until the program starts, which is scheduled to be in May of 2026. There's some talk that it could actually be longer. So we're avoiding something that's happening. The second piece is, I think it's when you look at the plans that school employees have with sick leave, they are probably better than sometimes what small businesses or could offer. And so by going with the state program, you're locked in at the 0.5% each. Whereas if you're part of private insurance company, you may actually, if not accessing the benefit, you could theoretically go lower. Our quote came in based off our demographics is at actually 0.93, which would be less than the state plan. By voting on this, it would allow us to go back in and recalculate the 0.5% that we have in our budget, which would be approximately, I believe, I'm going to have about $100,000 that I'm hoping to free up on this. And so that's another reason that I'm recommending this. And then the final reason is when working with your insurance companies and a carrier, they've worked on these plans, and they provide customer service. I'm not 100% sure that long-term, I feel like the state will be able to service us as well, because essentially we are more of a client in this situation and could choose to move some of our other policies. In getting this quote with Standard Insurance Company, one of the things that we must do as part of this is have another one of their products. And currently, the way for us to do this with a premium of about $9,000 a year would then be able to offer a $10,000 life insurance policy to all of our employees. So that would be something that would be part of this program for us, which is another great benefit that we could offer to our employees. So I don't see a lot of downside on this one. Pretty much we've made decisions in other municipalities to go this route. A lot of other municipalities and school departments are going the same direction. And anytime, in my opinion, if I can avoid a payment or a tax and push something off and save employees money, even that 0.5%, I would go that direction.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for the superintendent? School Board Member Roach?
All right, it's a numbers thing, so I'll ask. So when the law was passed, it's not making public schools, municipalities fund the program these 18 or 14 months? It's not making them do it? No?
No, you have, and I think there is a lot of challenges with this law.
Yeah.
Because as I was saying to the insurance company today, because everybody appears to be going in the direction of private insurance carriers, while also trying to raise this state program that's going to be managed. And my piece of it was, typically education has great sick leave benefits historically through collective bargaining agreements, that I suspect that municipalities and or school departments will access this a lot. And so the law, in my, the view that I'm looking here is, okay, we have a law that's going to increase revenues for insurance companies coming from taxpayer funds. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Right.
But that's the direction we're going, and my hope being that as we bring more clarity to this program, that there may be exemptions for schools and municipalities. And I know there's a bill out there, so we can delay that piece, because I understand the concept, and personally, to make sure that somebody had some sick days, I'm kind of personally, not speaking for the school department, I feel like that is a benefit for some places. But for a benefit that I probably won't access at all, I struggle with that for taxpayer funded. And I think the other piece that is, as you look at some of the programs that have happened in other states, I worry about people being out more and having access to something more than they contractually have, because I need teachers in the classroom, the kids. We struggle with substitutes already.
So you asking for, there's a vote tonight because April 1st is a deadline to contribute to the state program for the next 14 or 13 months
Correct,
before it actually starts.
correct.
I just thought that was a mandate, but I guess it's not.
Yeah, it's,
Not to get in the private sector, but is it a level of employees to, or is it all small businesses too?
so my understanding is that if you're if you're 15 employees
yeah.
and under,
Yeah.
it's only paid for by the employee, not the employer,
Okay,
the 0.5%.
okay. But all W-2 employees in the state of Maine have to choose and contribute. So these private businesses have to decide by April 1st to contribute to the state?
Yeah, you can go past that date, but April 1st, by doing this now, our hoping is that our application, you know, that you have to, that the insurance company will be put in as soon as these votes are taken, will then allow us to get approval as soon as possible so you can stop making that payment.
And then the last thing is, the state requires the 1% total contribution. The savings with the private sector is really the difference between the 1 and the 0.93. But our big savings is not contributing for the next 13 months. That's the big.
That is correct.
Okay. So the risk, just to clarify, the risk is, though, is that in 13 months from now, 14 months from now, the private sector could be above that one.
We won't be, it could be,
Yeah.
but for our situation, it wouldn't because we wouldn't have any claims. I mean,
Up to that point.
Right,
No, no.
up to that
So I'm talking maybe then another year
5
after
years
that.
down the
Yeah,
road, you
yeah.
could be in a
That's
different.
the risk.
Yeah.
And we could always shop it and
Correct.
decide elsewhere. Okay, thanks.
School Board Member Truman?
How long, if we were to contract with this insurance carrier, how long is the term? Is it just a 1-year term every time, or?
Yeah, we could shop that like insurance.
Okay, so just if it goes up too high, we can join back in with the state? Could we ever join back in with the
Could.
state if we wanted to at some point?
You could, yes.
I just don't understand how they're gonna fund this.
Neither
If
do I.
everybody's jumping ship, but
Neither do I.
that's for another group.
Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we approve contracting with a private insurance carrier for PFML insurance.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Preble. Any additional discussion or comments? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, that takes us to item F, and that is the health insurance memo, MEA-BT renewal.
So this is just informational, but not the information that we really love to receive based off health insurance rates. So as you can see from the memo, schools receive their insurance through the MEA Benefits Trust. And in the budget this year, we have 10% as a number for an increase, which in most years has been totally fine. But then this memo came out the other day, and, you know, kind of some difficult news to receive is that the trust in itself increase all across the state is going to see a 17.89% increase. In other years, the trust has had money to buy down that rate from some of its reserves or applied credit. And last year, they used $28 million to buy down the rate. Well, there was no surplus last year, and the trust has ended the plan year in historically a positive position. Now it doesn't have that positive position, and so I guess what I'm saying here is, while we have 10% in the budget, until that number comes out in early April, we may have to go in the other direction on that increase. This is the first time in my 13 years of being a superintendent that this type of letter has come to us about health insurance. So that tells me that we're not going to see communities getting 0, and we're going to see more in that 10+% range. So just informational, but definitely an item for us to watch.
Any comments? School Board Member Roach?
What's an extra 7% to our budget?
I think that percentually 1% tends to be around $40,000, plus or minus. And sometimes that changes based off the plan. I'd want to calculate that out, Kevin.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you for the information. Moving on to item G, and that is a budget presentation.
Okay, so as you know, we've talked about several budget items. Been through a memo last week. We've talked about our EPS funding, and we know where that comes from, and we've spent a lot of time talking about valuation. And so in preparation for City Council, I want to talk through a little bit more, highlight, I guess this is kind of like a preseason game for the City Council, because it's the same presentation that we'll get. But want to start talking about Saco school budget and where we are today. And so when you look at the Saco schools, pre-K through 8, we need to make sure that we provide a situation where rooms are staffed, we are accountable to taxpayers, we're providing a great education for our kiddos, but we also know that it can be very challenging times for taxpayers because we're just one half of the municipal budget. The other half is City Council, and we know as citizens we still want to make sure that our recycling's picked up and the roads are plowed and we have pavement and all of those good pieces. So we're one side of the coin, the city's the other side of the coin, and we have to work together to make sure that at the end of the day, this is something that our citizens can deal with and live with as we move forward. Now, the more challenging part of it is that while city councilors are held accountable for budgeting through elections, we in education get to have a vote on our budget every year. And so when things are out of whack compared to public perception, that's when you can struggle passing a local budget. One of the things that, while we had great support last year for the budget, I think we had also a lot of support of people who came to the polls last year, which actually is a good thing, because we had, around 4,000 people last June who were voting on the school and the school budget. And in both of those scenarios, you had 70 to 75% of your public supporting that. So that's a good sign. What scares me a little bit is that in some of the communities that we consider affluent communities in southern Maine, the margin of victory, I guess if that's what you want to call a budget validation vote or an approval, is really starting to shrink. Gorham, 2 votes. Like 30 votes in Greeley. So I think the public is feeling some pressure, and we know that when we look at the economy or the cost of food, there is definitely pressure out there for our citizens. And so we've spent a lot of time talking about valuation, and I think as a school committee over the last 4 years, we've understand the correlation between valuation and what that does for your school funding. And one of the things that's really interesting here about Saco is that we know that valuation has increased and increased quite significantly, but it has been in a situation where we have been under the state average, which is a very positive thing for us. When you eclipse state average, that's where your subsidy counts, your subsidy formula works in the wrong direction for you. and our city valuation has growth by 11.64%, while the state average is a little over 12.5%. Now, when you think about valuation growth, there are two different challenges that come with that. There's new valuation, which is, you know, great when a new house goes up or a new business, and that's like, okay, we're getting more than this, the land value. But if we're looking at Phil in the back of the room, who's living in his house and doesn't want to sell and just wants to continue to live in Saco happily, he has a valuation increase on his house that really is false money. And that's what I say, like, you can sell your house for this, but if you don't want to leave and you have to buy another house, really not that good for you right now. And so, you know, that's the piece that we have to think about in all of this, is that people's houses are become more valuable because of sales around us, but yet they have no desire to leave their house or leave Saco, and we have to worry about tax rate. As we go to the EPS formula page on this, we've gone through this here as a group, and we'll go through this on City Council, and they've gone through it the last couple of years. But we know that our student counts, our ratios between teachers and students are important to us. And then on page 2 is a lot of our weighted student counts. And one of the things that we know about recent change in this community is just last year we were talking about how 1 in 25%, or 1 in 4 of our students are living in poverty. And in one short time, that number is now 1 in 3. So we're seeing an increase of, you know, upwards of 7% or more, and it's on another slide, of our students and families who are struggling economically. We also know that we have had a large influx in multi-language learners here in the district. And at the same time, while that has brought an additional weight and count, we do have to be careful on the back side of this, because as we've talked about the hotel and that funding program leaving and possibly less students in our schools, on the back side we could see a student count drop and those in a weighted count situation drop, which could then plunge our subsidy in another year. So we just have to be very mindful of that. There are a couple of big bills that we've had in work with. Representative Archer has sponsored one of those. And there are 2 bills, LD 193 and then LD 501, that are very significant bills for us. LD 193, which is Representative Archer's bill, puts a 0.5 weight for students living in homelessness on page 2. And LD 501 increases the weight from 0.15 to 0.25 for economically disadvantaged, which would help our community in the funding pieces. Those bills will go to workshop in the coming months, and if there's testimony or any of those pieces, Maggie and I are happy to work with you, really working both sides of the aisle on that one of the importance. When you continue through our funding formula and you look at our valuation, in a lot of ways, we're still in great shape, because the state share of education for Saco next year is going to be 51%. Now, in the prior meeting that I was at just 2 hours ago, we were talking about a state share of 37%. It's a very different situation that we have today. And we have, just in our own area and the school departments that I'm presenting on tonight, a very different type of scenario playing out. And we'll talk about that a little bit, about where we are Saco-wise, and show you where some of the others are. One of the things that I want to draw your attention to in the next slide is when you look at the cost of students that we spend to educate Saco students. And we've had some discussion about this earlier. But what I want to draw your attention to overall in this is that when you look at where we compare in southern Maine, we're kind of at the midway point to the bottom half of this. And so when you talk and listen to people out in the community, this is the slide I want you to carry in your pocket. Because you can look at all of the other communities around us that spend significantly more per student. So if we were spending at the level of Kittery, let's say, there'd be an extra $12 million in our budget. I think those are important things to look at and understand as we go through this. We have a great educational program and great facilities here, or programs, and we're moving to great facilities. And we're operating just slightly above state average. That's a pretty good thing. We're efficient in all the places that we like to be, and are manageable, and we try to use our resources well, but also look up the chart. Don't look down the chart, look up the chart. Because we could be at a level that could bring more programming to our students. When we look at the demographics of our students here, one of the things that you can see is that we do have more students in 2014-15 than we have in prior years. But also remember that approximately 80 some odd students are occupants of the hotel. And so if that program goes away, our numbers are going to be more similar to the enrollments that are like 17, 18 than the upward trend. Looking at the percentage of our students that are economically disadvantaged and seeing that that's gone up. The number of ELs we serve is 8.5% of our current population, and special ed counts are around 18% of our student population. Now, when we look at this budget and we think about what our needs are, and you think about budget adjustments, currently in the budget, based off our current situation, I've got 1.5 EL teachers added to that budget and 3 new EL ed techs. Now, this budget was started to be put together prior to having a full understanding of what was happening with the hotel and still not having a full understanding of where that will look at. But that's an area where we'll probably spend a little bit more talking about once we get more information. I think also, I don't think that just if the hotel program was to go away that we could cut back on all of that, because I think we're a little underserved right now. We know that last year, outside of the budget process, we added an additional teacher at Young School, and that's in the budget to maintain those levels. Throughout the springtime, throughout the budget process, as we look at things, we are going to have to continue to do, two things on student population. One, look at the enrollments at Young School. Look at the enrollments at Fairfield School. And possibly, based off where the growth is, we may have to go back to thinking about, hey, parents, which ones may want to go to Fairfield School? And if class sizes are too big and too small over there, the ability to shift another teacher over to Young School really isn't there. Because Jeff's pretty tapped out on space. And so it would be more about having the conversation of what if we have to redraw lines a little bit to accommodate those pieces. Hopefully do it through choice, that's the best scenario, because through choice is the best way to do it and get through 3 years, because you don't want to split up families or people who've been in school for a while, but I'm sure there's a process that we can get to. From a curriculum piece, as we look at our spending, one of the things Meg's doing with the principals is really examining software programs that are used throughout the district in curriculum. Just looking at our children and feedback that we get, examining how much time a kiddo during the school day is spent on top of the laptops involved in a software program versus direct instruction. And I think that needs to be a greater conversation through curriculum committee and at the budget process, because, you know, I don't know that through the day we need kids totally glued to these, because they're probably more than we want them to be after hours as well. Think about those things. Continue to think about staffing ratios and where we are to surrounding communities. Think about our capital improvements at SMS. We've done a lot, and there's still a lot to do. Examine our fund balance. You know, 4 years ago, we were in a tough spot. We owed the city some money, and, you know, now we have a healthy fund balance as a school department. And I really hope that before we move into the new schools, we can address the one portable that is left at SMS and figure out a solution to that without there being a tax hit, but more of using fund balance that we've been able to manage throughout the process. Want to continue to look at energy and fuel costs, out-of-district placement and alternative programming, making sure there's equitable assignments, as we talked about, between the two schools. And then also understanding the staffing needs as we continue to refine what's going to happen as we move into the new complex. We've talked about that a lot, of where are we going, what do we need, and how do we get there in a way that doesn't impact employees. When you look at the cost drivers in this scenario, 9 through 12 tuition is an increase of about $1.3 million. Salaries is about $1.359 million. Health insurance is $236,000. But remember that people have different plans from year to year. And so that 236 encompasses some change in plans, because we did see some changes from going throughout the district, whether that's full family down to a single or two adults through the hiring process, and others that seemed to be something that stood out to us. And so as we look at a percent increase, that number throughout the district is much larger, that 1%, than the 236. The 129 in benefits, about $100,000 of that would be the 0.5% reduction that we could take out of the budget. School construction is $1.1 million. So that is your first debt service payment. One of the pieces is you're going to get state aid for that amount of money once the bond is sold in the fall. So when you look at a $4.3 million increase, please know that 1.1 of that is going to be offset with a revenue coming directly from the state for the building project. You will not see that in our EPS formula, but it will be added money once that bond is sold. They've earmarked that at the state level. When you look at the overall picture for us, we received about $1.5 million in more state subsidy. So that was a positive based off the 279 and the information that came out. And we factored in all of these costs. So in this scenario, when you look at our expenditure for expenditure, you're looking at an 8.35% increase in expense. When you factor in adult education and the subsidy that you get and the state construction project, currently you're looking at a 4.89% increase to the taxpayer. So just for the other side of the coin, where the expenses are higher than the tax increase here, in my other life, 2 hours ago, I was giving just the exact opposite, where the expenses are lower percentage versus a tax increase because of the state funding in land and property valuation. So, you know, for the first draft of where we are today, in looking at a 489, I'm fairly positive going into the council piece. It doesn't mean that this is where we're going to end up, because there are some factors that, from health insurance to the PFMLA, to just looking at what our student population will be next year. And then also looking at some of those comparable services and making sure that we're staffed. Either are we too low or are we too high? And then working with the city council to think about what the overall picture is for our taxpayers is where we need to go next. And I think that typically we'll get some good feedback on Monday night, and as the next month starts to occur, we'll start to have a better understanding about where our community can, and what they can handle, because certainly I am not unrealistic to think that we need to be concerned about families, pocketbooks, elderly, and all of the uncertainty that we live with right now, and be cautious. The other piece that I will make sure to, remind us and the council about being cautious is that while this payment for school construction is offset by the state, let's remember that in just a few short years, we will be picking up a local share of that, about $40-ish million, or $35, $40 million, that will be a local debt payment that will add to our tax rate. So happy to answer any questions about where we are today.
Any questions or concerns for Superintendent Ray?
Madam Mayor.
School Board Member Richards?
So for health insurance, it's just up in the air at this point?
Yeah, I mean, so typically what happens is the last week of March, you'll get an email from the Benefits Trust that will say, the band of this year's increases will be between this percent and this percent. Then you go to your experience rating and you say, oh, this is a good year or a bad year. I'm going to be on the upper piece or the bottom of it. And our experience rating is not good this year. And so you have that news for about a week and a half, and then they have a meeting, and then usually first Friday in like April, you get an individual letter of what your rate's going to be.
Estimated to go up about 7%, 8%?
So I have 10% in the budget, but they at 17% scared me in that letter. So if we had to add an additional 7%, I just don't know.
And you estimated, what, was it 40,000 per percent?
Yep.
So you're looking at potentially like another
200.
300,000,
Yeah.
280?
Could be.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's not the news that we're looking for.
Thank you. Anyone else? School Board Member Roach?
Thank you, Jeremy. Hopefully we have city council guests here, so hopefully they're still awake back there. How you doing? So,
They just liked the presentation that much that they wanted to
they
hear it
want it
twice.
doubled up.
They want to double that up.
Don't want any Guinnesses affecting them on St. Patrick's Day for the real presentation, so. Bring your own. Now, for basically 5%, hair under 5%. Now, not to say we should pretend we're another community, but South Portland made the news here with they got some serious issues to deal with. And I'm not saying we would go that road, but, in case on the city side, they're going to need less of an increase from us. And we'll kind of let that meeting happen to really go into numbers, but there are areas here that you would look at in case council does want to point. I mean, I brought up at the last meeting that, you know, everything going on with the federal government, the state government, it might not be best to adjust revenues upward, but, you know, main care could be higher, and it could cut 0.5% from the budget. Undesignated fund operations, what is that? There's a slight increase for that, similar increase.
Oh, just let me look at that one. So that's the fund for operations from the undesignated fund, which is our carryover.
Yeah,
That's, I put an extra $50,000 in there from last year. But that's also matched with an expenditure.
and then other, you know, big areas are, of course, each of the schools, special education, you know, is there, you know, without squeezing it too much, is there areas there that you would see, you know, based on student counts, say for TA, or where classes come in, maybe between Fairfield and Young, you know, do you see anything that could be?
Yeah, I think that, you know, after our meeting with the city council, and again, looking at all of the economic factors, like take main care, we've added $50,000 to that possible revenue income because, you know, Jess and the team have done a really nice job billing at that piece. That's actually one of the more scarier ones that I'm a little bit worried about as a whole, because I don't know what's going to happen on the main care level, or, you know, Medicaid nationwide if there are reductions to that. That could be a scary one. The other piece is that without the budget being the supplemental budget being passed in Augusta, we could see major delays. So having a good idea of exactly what's coming in, we may not see a lot of that until the fall from this point forward, because it sounded like for 90 days, things were going to be pretty tough. We do sit on a strong fund balance, which could help us with those. But I think it's also just, like, you always have to look at what your population is and your student needs and what your service levels are and staff time and all of those pieces, just to make sure that we do the balancing act, to make sure that if we need something, I want to have a situation here, as in always, if we're coming and asking for something, it's because we need it. And if there's an opportunity, if something shifts within the district and you don't have the same level of need, you need to be willing to say, we've got to give it back. And I say that as a need give back situation, because if you always come ask, people are thinking that there's never any shifts. And I want to make sure that we have that relationship with the council in here, is that, hey, sometimes when we needed the teacher last year at Young School, I don't think any of us really blinked, and I don't think anybody in the public really blinked. But if I didn't have the numbers to back that up to request that again, that's where you have distrust build, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Good.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone.
Thank you.
All set, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item H this evening, that is the second reading of the 2025-2026 school calendar.
Are we just looking for a motion?
Yep.
on this
Any
one?
backup explanation or additional, Superintendent? Right? No.
So on the second reading of the calendar, it seems like everybody is, for the districts around it, is choosing the version number 2. We were able to make a switch on the open house nights, and so we'd like to put this version to that second reading.
Madam Mayor.
Is there a motion? School Board Member Truman?
I move we approve version 2 of the 2025-26 school calendar.
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Any additional discussion or comments? School Board Member Truman?
I just want to say thank you to all the principals. I know we got a request from PTOs to move the open houses. I think it was important, not only for the volunteer aspect, but also to accommodate parents. I'll be in that boat next year, having kids at Burns and at SMS, having them on the same night. Was going to be tricky, but also if you consider parents who have one car or one parent and trying to split their time. I know I'll have a very anxious 6th grader next year who I'll probably need to spend that whole 2 hours there. And I don't want to neglect my other child. So thanks for everybody being super flexible and making that open house change in there. And I'm really excited about the 2 weeks off in December. So
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, plus the dads who avoid conferences, I appreciate this switch. So. I'm not psyched for myself.
I know. Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
yes.
And School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0, and that is to accept version 2. Okay, moving on to item I, and that is the NWEA winter data.
So I just wanted to provide this informationally. We spent some time digging into the data at Curriculum Committee and talking about some specific grade levels and areas of either really high growth in winter to winter or lower than expected growth. Everything that you're kind of looking at on here averages 50th percentile. On the left-hand column, you have that growth percentile. So did you grow a year in a year's time, which would be 50th percentile? Above is more than a year's growth in a year's time. Less is less than a year's growth in a year's time. But also remember that we're looking at average scores. So we're not comparing necessarily apples to apples. We're looking at the average of that grade level the year before and the average this year. So it can be impacted by particular high or low scores for move-ins or move-outs. On the right-hand column, you see the achievement percentile, which just means on average, the average score of all of our students in that grade level is at the 50th percentile, which would be equal to the national average, or above or below that. So generally speaking, we see that we have some growth percentile highs and lows. Our achievement percentiles are generally hovering just above or below the 50th percentile for math. And in reading, we see about the same thing, again, with pockets of higher growth or slightly higher achievement, and then some pockets that seem like anomalies. I will share, as I always do with this data, that the really powerful work that happens within our school level team meetings, both in looking at individual students that are either receiving additional supports and how well are those students growing, or are there students that aren't showing the growth that we would like to see from them, and what supports are we going to change or put into place for those students so that they do make growth. Another really great aspect of the work that our coaches have been doing is looking at the subgroup scores, both for grade levels and individual classroom teachers. And that allows us to actually say, okay, this teacher or this grade level is really strong with computation, but maybe not so much with data analysis. And what can we do between the winter and the spring to target those sub-goal areas that may be of particular need? Or how can we capitalize for those teachers or grade levels that have that as a particular strength to make sure that's spread out across multiple areas? I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
Thank you. Any questions? School Board Member Roach?
So on the growth percentile on the lowest numbers, for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, even though 7th grade is a little low, is that due, do you think, to the COVID effect? that they're coming from the pre-KK up to that point?
We talked a little bit in curriculum committee about like which grade levels were in COVID at what time, and if we thought that had an impact. I think while we had a lot of discussion around that, I wouldn't say that at this point for the grade levels where we're seeing that lower growth percentile, that it is related to COVID personally. I mean, there's like a long-standing lag that we're still seeing nationally and in the state of Maine, but I don't think it has to do with that. I will say that our, the second to third grade test is a change in assessment. So the band of how difficult the questions can be changes, like our K2 test, even since it's an adaptive test, our kids can only go up to, I think it's like 4th or 5th grade skills, whereas when they're in 3rd grade, we're in a 3-5 or a 2-5 test, but they can get harder questions if they answer things correctly. We can't look at individual, we can look at individual scores, but unlike a paper final exam that I was used to having as a kid, as a teacher, you can't say, oh, this student got this question right and this question wrong. You kind of just see that in generalities. So we will definitely keep a close eye on that. Sometimes it can be because there was a really high average the year before, and so it's like hard to keep that average up. So when we look at our 5th grade in, sorry, let me look at math. When we look at our 3rd grade in math at the 34th percentile for growth, which is certainly concerning, but then we look over into the right-hand column and see that in this assessment, they were in the 52nd percentile, so that kind of means that they were performing much higher than the 50th percentile, 52nd percentile last year, which is why that growth percentile is not at 50 this year.
Also, the achievement is based on the national, so.
Correct.
So COVID wouldn't necessarily have an effect there because it's the whole nation experiencing it.
Yes, though they have not re-normed. Their last norm set of data is from 2015 to 2020. So it is, those percentiles are compared to pre-COVID data. Okay. NWA has released some data since then, not to re-norm them by percentiles yet, though we're expecting that soon, but just to say that in looking at recent data, kids are, generally speaking, performing below the percentiles that they were performing, which is consistent with that NAEP data as well.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Okay, that now takes us to item 13, and there is no other information this evening. Item 14, there is no executive session. And item 15 is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 to adjourn at 8:20. And thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.